And here we are. Welcome to the next episode of Human Centric Podcast. And I'm super excited to have Jonathan Abrahamson here with us. John is Senior Vice President, Digital Experience and Delivery in Europe segment of Deutsche Telekom. And I'm quite excited for two reasons. The first one, because John is one of the first faces I've seen in DT when I joined. You were the first one in the zone.
That goes back.
Yeah, and the second one, because the moment I told people that we are recording a podcast with you, my WhatsApp went mad.
Oh dear.
I've got so many questions about what is this digital and what you actually are doing here. So welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, like Svetlana was saying, John, we actually had this experience of people sending us so many questions when they heard you were coming on, and I'm guessing you guys can fill me in on that. But I was really curious, like, what is it that's being aroused here? What is it that we are expecting to find in this episode? And I think part of it is to try and pick apart this whole topic of the digital experts of the future. Like, what is it we're going to be needing, and what is it actually going to be like to be us in a future where the digitalization is like coming in so dramatically in a way. But to start us off, John, we do want you to explain a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your story. And to start us off, I was very curious about something you said when we were doing the research, when you said you are so happy about the job you have right now. It sounded a bit like you were willing to kind of fight to keep it somehow. And so here's my question number one for you. Tell us, what is so exciting about the work that you get to do these days?
Thank you. I think it's true. I mean, I would put down a bet and fight anyone who told me that their job was better than mine or more exciting than mine. I think, so the role that we have in the context of telco is so broad but so massive. And I think, where we are as an industry and where we need to be, there is still so much work to be done. But the wonderful thing about working at a place like DT and in telco more broadly is that we're very established businesses. We have huge scale. We have millions of customers across the group, and those customers are expecting a certain level of experience and interaction with us. And these are areas where, with the right skill sets, with the right people, with the right investment, we can make huge progress in. So that's really why I love the job. It's the scope, it's the scale, and it's the ability to work with really smart people.
It sounds like you're kind of not afraid to really get your hands dirty and do a piece of work here. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. There's so much to do. And so much opportunity, and I think telco is going through a bit of a sort of a renaissance now. I think through this Corona pandemic, where people are starting to realise the value that we can bring to customers' lives. But with that realisation comes an expectation about how they want to interact with us. And they don't compare us to other telcos; they compare us to Netflix or Facebook or Amazon or Uber. And we really need to be making investments now to catch up in the sort of expectations that customers have of us rather, when they compare a digital experience for the companies that they deal with on a day-to-day basis.
So if I take a comparison like from the outside world and look at it from a general perspective, part of what you're saying is that we are all being a bit reborn by this pandemic, aren't we? We're having to reinvent ourselves.
More ways than one.
Yeah. And for sure, telcos is definitely a place where you see that happening.
Absolutely.
So there was this one place where I wanted to take you, because you spoke to me about, as a leader, of course, then in this field where there's so much work to be done and so much, it sounds like there's a need for real courage, when there's so much new stuff happening and so much evolving to do. And yet you're telling me as a leader that you really thrive on employing people who are actually, you in your eyes anyway, better than you at what you do. Am I right? Did I get that right?
Listen, I've had an incredibly blessed career in hiring people who are smarter than me. I love doing that. And I like to surround myself with those people. I think, this is such a broad field, and there is so many nuances. It's moving so fast. But I think, product people in general, of which I would consider myself, love building things. I love being around things being built. And there's always going to be someone in this field who knows it better, who has done it before, who has done it a different way. And I think the scope that we have within DT to sort of bring these people together, unleash them on a task, is so broad. And I think that's a major part of the fun that we're having at the moment.
Okay, thanks for saying that. And now I want to kind of try and dig beneath, because I would imagine, just in my life as the consultant that I am, I would dare to say, yes, on my team, there are people who I would say are better than me at stuff. But I would still say, somewhere along the line, wouldn't your ego get a little bit hurt by employing, or frightened by employing people you think are better than you? Or is that just me?
I think it's just you. No, not at all. I mean, I think, like I said, this is such a broad area, and it would be actually impossible to be an expert in all the fields that we cover. Digital is one of these topics which means so many different things to so many different people, and it can be everything from solving world peace to world hunger and everything in between. So actually, it would be impossible to be an expert in everything. And because it's becoming so specialized now, and the technology that we use now is becoming so specialized and so specific to different parts of the interaction that we have, actually you can specialize and we can bring in experts from each of these individual fields. The magic happens when we bring these people together and let them go at a task, and that's really where we have the most fun.
So when you're bringing experts together to be co-creative, that's when the fun starts.
Absolutely, and seeing the outputs that they have. And again, building on in a telco context where we're not, say, in startup mode where we're looking to scratch for customers. I mean, Deutsche Telekom has millions of customers across the globe now. So, and these customers are all interacting with us on a day-to-day basis. They all rely on us for their livelihoods now, and for their interactions. So that hard part in digital, which quite often in other industries people find in trying to get scale, we don't have that problem. We have scale from day one. We're an incumbent business. We have all these customers waiting to interact with us. So building platforms and capabilities on top of that immediately gives you scale, and we don't have to try for that. So that's another big task that makes it much more fun here to work.
Yeah. It sounds like you're messing about with really huge, very powerful forces. Like in so many ways, things are easy and explodable in a way.
Yeah, I think you get immediate feedback because people have certain expectations, and the ability for us to test something, try it out, and expose it to 1 million customers is something that we can do very easily, and very quickly as well if they're happy with it or if they're not. But again, given that we're able to move quite quickly in digital, you can obviously always increment and improve the services as we go.
So in the middle of this pandemic, with all its kind of negative connotations and moods, I guess, here's a little bit of an upper. Here's a bit of inspiration and curiosity and possibility.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the corona situation was very challenging for society, but in the digital space, it's been an absolute boon. We have to sort of weigh that. When we were too effusive about the fun that we're having at the moment, but certainly it's made our jobs and our tasks much more important, I think.
So back to this job that you have now and the way you feel about it. Congratulations on being so happy about the job that you have. Tell us a little bit, just in a few minutes, in your own words. Tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, you probably realise it's not a German accent. So I was born in Australia and grew up there. I did an economics and marketing degree, but joined a graduate program at a company called Optus, which is a telco in the Australian market. I was there for a number of years doing a series of sales and marketing roles, but took an opportunity to move overseas with my family. So I should mention, probably most importantly, married with two daughters who basically run the family and run the household. So I live to serve. But we took the opportunity to leave Australia and move to Singapore to work at Singtel, where we were there for a few years. And then Singtel is part of Optus was part of the Singtel group, as was Airtel in India. So we thought, we got to know the Singapore market and Singtel, and we thought, what better opportunity than to explore further in the group. So we moved to India, which couldn't be more different from Singapore. And we were there for a couple of years, and I would have to say that was probably the most formative, exciting, part of my career and my personal life to date. I think both myself and my family probably learned more from those few years in India than at any other point in my career before that. But I wanted to stay married, so we had to move on. And had the opportunity to join DT and move to Germany. So that's how I come to be here.
So just take me back to India for a second. Can you say, just Telegram style, what was the learning? What is it you're picking up there?
So we were talking before about scale. India is a country of 1.3, 1.4 billion people. We moved from Singapore, where it's a population of about 5 million, to Gurgaon, where we lived, which is a suburb just outside of Delhi, which has 40 million people. So then coming to Bonn with 300,000, it's sort of it's a different end of the spectrum. But that whole country is just amazing. I think anybody who hasn't visited needs to visit at least once. It's one of those sort of it's very difficult to explain in the amount of time that we have today, but I think it's a country which is growing immensely. It's full of intensely smart people who work incredibly hard, and I watch it with great interest as it grows through this growth phase in the economy, and really looking forward to seeing what that country becomes, because it's an amazing place.
And they do have some kind of they sure do have work ethics, don't they? Incredible.
Unlike anything I've seen. So it was great to. I learned a lot there, and again from a personal point of view as well. I think my wife and my kids also learned a huge amount from living there. So yeah, definitely on the list.
I was about to say, because I can understand from a professional point of view that moving around like this is going to have to be educational somehow, and you're meeting different cultures. But just for a second, let's talk about the missus and the kids. They must have been so flexible to go along with you.
I think
what has it done to your?
My children are very confused. If you ask them where they're from, they never quite know. They speak with American accents because they go to American schools, which bothers me a little bit. But I think I think for them it's very normal. They at least my kids they've lived outside of Australia longer than they ever lived in Australia. They were used to, they grew up, their formative years in Singapore. In that market, it's very different to going to school in India, where it's quite often to see monkeys and pigs on the side of the road, on the way to school or in the schoolyard, to coming to Germany, where it's so different again. But I think it's a nice thing that we're sort of inculcating into them, that they're very international. This concept of living internationally and meeting and growing that way, and living in countries where English is not their first language, I think is been quite good for them. So I wish I had the same when I was a kid. They miss their grandparents a little bit, or at least their grandparents miss them a little bit. But I think the benefits far outweigh that.
So if we take that to be a kind of, there's a recipe for like broadening your comfort zones here, isn't there? And what you're saying is that you have to realize that you will miss some things, but you, on the other hand, you do benefit from however you travel, whether it's from one department to another, whether it's from one country to another, in a way. And so you should really thank your kids and your wife, I guess, for having been so flexible and go along with you.
Absolutely.
You're actually promoting this, aren't you, as a kind of recipe for expanding your work horizons? Am I right?
Absolutely. I think I wouldn't be where I am today without the opportunity to work across these different markets. I've followed the telco industry, and telco is similar between the different markets. But the opportunity to essentially start from scratch again, from a networking point of view, from a market understanding point of view, from an industry understanding point of view, from a regulatory point of view, each of these is different in every market. So having to start again every few years really sort of forces you out of a comfort zone. It doesn't let you get comfortable. And I think that's, the biggest fear is always mediocrity. So, forcing yourself to always start again, I think is very healthy. And it really forces you to sort of, push yourself. And I think that's been a great.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I'm going to stop you there when you're saying the biggest fear is actually mediocrity. So the biggest fear isn't being super bad at something, but actually mediocrity in itself.
Right.
That's really interesting. I think when I was thinking about this topic and I was thinking about myself and having seen what travel does to people I coach in the corporate world at large, I would so agree with you. I've seen so many examples of people actually like visiting different cultures, and I think when we visit a culture that's not our own, we realize something about our own culture. So you start becoming aware of like, oh, that's why I do this, or my culture is full of that. And you become more able to maybe create choices that are wiser. I was thinking, Svetlana, maybe I could throw this one to you, Mrs. Ukraine.
You know,
What's it been like for you? Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm listening to John, and I'm saying yes inside myself, because my kids who never lived in Ukraine, they are Ukrainians, and I have to explain to them why you're not Norwegians and why you are Ukrainians, even though you never lived in that country. But I think if I would go and back to myself, who was the younger one in my 20s, and I would give advice to myself, I would say never even doubt going internationally, because I would also not become who I am today without having experience of, living in Bulgaria, Ukraine, Norway, traveling to Asia, working there for a number of countries. So that changes you, and I think you become much more open to diversity. Yeah, and to diversity, not just in the culture perspective, diversity of opinions, backgrounds, education, and diversity, as we have been discussing with Johanna, is not easy. It actually comes with sweat and blood. To really make most out of it. But that gives you more potential for uncover that diversity. And I think in our country...
Training your diversity musculature, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Training your diversity muscles, yes. And like I said, this perspective has been so important for me, at least, to see that when I come from a culture and I live for long enough in a different culture, you actually start seeing what your own culture is about, and thereby you get conscious about the choices you've made. Because at the end of the day, we are the sums of the cultures that we are brought up in, aren't we? Unless we kind of make conscious shifts. So that's, I think, what are we saying here, guys? We're saying move around. Is that what we're saying to people?
If at all possible, I think, it's not possible to get the kind of learning without the international experience. I think if there's ever an opportunity to go for that, it's something you should jump on. It shouldn't be seen as an imposition. It should be seen as a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And so even if it's scary, it's kind of go there.
And also I would say that take the opportunity, if you have the opportunity to go around. I also would say to the CEOs, open up the opportunities, because that also creates a lot of momentum and opportunity, not just for individual, but for a company per se, when you bring diverse talent and run teams, projects, business together with the diverse talents internationally as well.
That sounds so true. It does. Shall we go into the digital stuff?
Yeah, John, you started saying the digital is so diverse, from hunger to world peace. So I think that's one of the reasons why so many questions are popping up on my WhatsApp. So what is digital for telecom? What are those digital experts that you are hiring and you are bringing inside the company?
Well, again, I think as we mentioned before, there's no one specific type. And we work because we're doing for these platforms, which are so central to the work that we do. We look to now work less through vendors, which is, I think, we seem to in this industry always go through this sort of big swings from insourcing to outsourcing. We're definitely on the insourcing swing now, specifically when it comes to these core platforms, which are so important for us. So it's everything from engineering, software engineering, through architecture, through analytics, through product marketing, through CVM, through, it really runs the full gamut of capability that we're looking to bring into the company now.
And CVM stands for, just for the listeners?
Customer value marketing. So it's how we value and interact with customers and interact and continue to sell and upsell to those customers. Yeah.
So this is basically a profession in different domains. So you have to be experts in different domains and work in the digital space, more or less. And the domains, the ones that you mentioned, CVM, data, product development, and so on and so forth. Can you develop those experts inside the company? Or is it more that we have to bring in the new blood into the company to have this different type of thinking?
I think it's definitely a mix. And I think it has to be a mix. Because certainly for the hardcore experts, these people tend to have devoted their career to up until this date on that specific topic. So likely not potentially coming from a telco market where, they would have potentially working on other topics up until that point. So bringing in some of those anchor hires to take some of the more, deeper topics is important for us. But we also, telco is a very specific industry and we need telco knowledge and telco understanding and that sort of commercial understanding as well. And blending the two is where the value comes in. So essentially what we need is the new blood coming in, bringing the high-end tech talent and being mixed with the really strong core telco people who need to learn some of the digital technology to develop themselves. But I think between those two outcomes, we end up with where we need to be.
How do you develop inside the company, John? I'm having right now scouting for talents. I'm talking to a number of people, which sometimes are fascinating stories across. You could have people in the sales who have been, selling and having high numbers, who really want to move to digital product development. Or people who are working with social media and who want to go to product development, but they don't necessarily know how. So they know they want to make a shift. It's a bit scary, but they also understand that's what they desire. They want to. So what would be your advice? How to develop that competence?
Drop me an email.
Drop me an email.
Happy to chat. I think. It's true. I think the good thing about this part of the industry is it's not like maybe other disciplines which have been around for 20 or 30 years and you need 15 years worth of experience to become into this field, because these capabilities and these tasks are not that old and they're constantly developing now, so you can pick it up. I think ultimately you need to have a knack and understanding for technology, understanding how things work. I think that's going to be important. There's no getting away from that part. But if you have that self-motivation about being interested, then to be honest, maybe it's a big secret we shouldn't tell, but what we're doing is not rocket science, and it can be learned, and you can develop in that space. So yeah, absolutely happy to chat to people who are interested in joining the team.
That's super cool. But tell us a bit more. How do you learn? Is it kind of following the projects, or is it kind of like trainings online, or shadowing a team? How can I,
I think you mentioned three very good approaches. I think there's a mixture of all of the above. I think there's tons of stuff you can learn online, and there's tons of white papers that talk about the really awesome product companies and how they operate and how they approach product development, product management. So that's always, self-learning is always important to sort of augment the learning. But I think, to be honest, the best way is on the job. So if you can find a way of being, attached to a product team, pick up some topics, learn on the job and develop, and you can see how much you like it. And obviously that can be expanded with online learning and the like as well. Yeah. But to be honest, on the job supplemented by self-learning, I think is the best way to get into it. So
what John is saying, Han, is just start. So if you have a desire, just start. There are multiple ways of getting there. We had some time back, John, we had a conversation with you about digital also being a mindset. And that digital expertise is not something that only experts should have, but also we would maybe demand it from the management teams as well to really understand the impact. So how does digitization and what is happening right now impacting our management teams, impacting our leadership? How do we have to change and adopt to that?
I think we are changing and adopting. I think if we look at the progress that's been made in Europe over the last couple of years, there's been huge progress. Our app 2 years ago was in 20% of customers' hands. Now it's in 62% of customers' hands. Every month in Europe, 62 out of every 100 customers opens our app and has an interaction. That wasn't driven by me or my team. That was driven by the management teams in the NatCos. We've just passed €1 billion in payments via the app.
That's super cool.
In the last month. We have countries like Slovakia who do upwards of 60% of their tariff changes via the app. So these changes are happening now, and we've made, or at least the team has made, huge progress in this space. So I feel that momentum growing, which again is another reason why I love the job so much. And I think looking forward now, what we see is more doubling down in this space. I think, and this is where I think the crux comes, where we've made good progress in measuring and understanding how we interact with customers through digital channels, but we still have customers who interact with us through offline channels, to a huge degree as well. So this year now we start to bring in digital measurement of offline interactions and really sort of getting very deep insights into how customers are interacting with us in offline channels. We can marry that with our online digitally understanding of the customer and really get a very holistic view of how we measure our customers' experience, which then lets us intervene as well. So, sorry, a long answer to a short question, but yeah, I think there's progress there, and I can see further progress coming in this space.
And it becomes like, when John describes it as business as usual. So now digital feels like business as usual.
Again, the business has moved a long way in 3 years, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanna comment, John, that you make it sound so easy.
So simple,
You make it sound so simple, like it's just gonna happen. It's really that's inspiring in itself, I think. If we then reframe the question, because what you're saying about the management teams across Europe and in the NatCos, NatCo actually being, of course, your local operations
national
in
company.
the different countries.
Yes.
You are saying they are doing something right. So rather than saying what should they do more of or less of, you're saying they are doing something which is leading to very good results. Can you pinpoint what kind of leadership behavior really drives digital success these days? Is it like loose or tight? Is it hard or mild? What is it?
I think there was a period of I think you need to break it down into two components. I think there was a component around the technology that's available to solve these things, and there was an investment that was required over the first couple of years of our journey here to address some of that technology. That's not a job that's ever finished, but it's difficult to make too much progress without some level of hygiene around the sort of technology and tools that we're using. So that's really where we invested the time over the first couple of years. But it was, if you build it, they will come, and they came, right? Now that we're able to see the value that digital and digitalization can bring, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And as you starting to measure things, and that's one wonderful thing about digital is measurement is very, very easy and very, very scalable and very, very insightful, much more so than potentially traditional channels. You start seeing the insights and the interventions that you can take on those insights, which paints a very, very simple picture for a management team to understand how they balance their time. I think we hire very smart people into management positions in the company, and if they can see the value, it makes sense to make the progress there.
So hiring the right people even for those positions is really important. I am hearing agile way of working. I am for sure hearing growth mindset. If I imagine that some of those managers have been around at least for a decade or maybe two, then actually being on top of that, the tempo that things are happening in right now, it must be a challenge, surely. Or am I wrong?
I think challenge, yes, no doubt. But if you're having fun at work, then it's good, right? I mean, who's and this is fun stuff to do, because the input versus the output, when you get it right, is so multiplicative that it's at least I think people are enjoying the progress that we're making. That's been a core driver there.
enjoyment as a means of success. That's interesting.
And passion,
So,
Hannah. I can also feel passion here.
Yeah, here we go again.
Here we go
We've
again.
had this weird experience, John, of every person who's been on the show so far talking about talent, talent development, talent maintenance, talent search, whatever it is. We end up discussing the word passion. It's very interesting. And without passion, maybe we're not really able to kind of bring our talents to the table somehow. Unless we have a desire to do so, we can be as talented as we want somehow. It's strange.
So,
As a tourist looking in, so I'm not actually employed in a telecom company. I travel across loads of fields of expertise within a kind of working month. I am so curious about like what are the hotshot first visible results that we're going to be seeing in the next few years of the digitalization. What's it going to be like to be an end user and also an employee in Deutsche Telekom just a few years from now? What are the biggest differences we're going to see?
I'm not a futurist, so I think that's always a tough question to answer. But I think if we follow the breadcrumbs of what's happened, I think more and more digital tools, more and more digital ways of working. Again, as we mentioned before, the corona crisis has changed the way we work fundamentally. And how we interact with each other. The fact that our development center, we have an in-house development center in India now, which does all the development for all our central platforms across broadband, television, and digital. They had to go into lockdown in Gurgaon, and has been closed down for coming up on a year now. If you would have told me before that we could close the center for a year and have absolutely zero impact on output, I would not have believed you. Yeah. But ultimately, it just works. People have found a way, and it just works. I used to travel, to 1 to 2 countries per week in my role in Europe. That was the way that we just operated. Now that doesn't happen anymore. I haven't been on a plane for 6 or 7 months, so we interact in that fashion. So the usage of digital tools and digital insights, I think, is going to be a core component of how our jobs change, but not just in the digital space. Across the business, whether it's commercial teams, finance teams, HR teams, everybody now sees the value of interacting in this way. And whilst it's nice to be in the room and give someone a hug, it's not always possible. So at least we get the next best thing, and we can actually get some efficiency through this process as well. So a careful medium between the two would be nice.
Yeah. So right now you're not being a futurist; you're being a realist. This is what it's like already, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is.
But I think
this is what they.
Yeah. I think what we've learned is that it was almost forced upon us. And I think if things would have returned to normal after a month, we probably would have gone back to how things were before. I don't think they will now. I think even once we're through this current crisis, I think fundamentally the way that we work and the way that we interact with our customers and how our customers interact with us has fundamentally changed and won't return to the way it was before. And I think that's great for this part of the industry, at least.
I guess the corona, it's so obvious, isn't it? Has been a bit of a disruptor, hasn't it? It's just plain good old-fashioned disruption,
yes,
with a positive effect as well. I think what I get curious about there, of course, is the human angle to that and what it actually does to us over time. Not to be able to interact in the same room, not to be able to read body language or read the mood in the same way, or chit-chat and small talk. There's so many things that people say they're missing out on these days, and I'll be very curious to see what research says about that a few years from now.
Absolutely.
But you, my friend, are telling us that your job is pretty goddamn exciting right now. And I'm just curious to kind of start taking us towards a finishing off. If I was a young talent out there in the world looking to see where I would want to be employed, what would make me want to come exactly to Deutsche Telekom? What would be the attraction right there?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few components to this. I think firstly, the scale at which we operate, which I spoke about before, is massive, and you start on day one with that. But the progress that we've made in digital versus other industries is not the same. We're not anywhere near as digital as companies that were born in a digital environment. So the scope of the roles that we have here is much broader than what you would find at some of the traditional GAFAs of the world, where they're so big, and you're, product manager X looking at this button on this page four levels deep. Our business hasn't scaled to that level yet. So the opportunity for super broad roles, looking across super broad areas, working on the technology stacks and building things from scratch. I think that's specifically in the engineering space. That's an area which really drives, really sort of gets engineers' blood going. The fact that they can build something from scratch and have that on a resume as something which hasn't existed before, rather than incrementing on the minutiae, which potentially happens in other parts of the industry. I think that's really where the excitement comes in this industry. So the scale, the breadth of the roles, and the fact that DT ultimately, and telco more broadly, is a wealthy industry, right? So there's money to spend and investment to happen, and there's a mandate to grow, which is why we're hiring and why we're making all these investments now. So I think, from a young talent point of view, that ticks all the boxes from my point of view.
Do we see any gender issues moving forward in the world of digitalization? Is it how do you see it now? I know the movement of the girl geeks and everything being an important one in the decade gone by. Do you see that popping up anywhere in terms of attracting talent?
Not if I can have anything to do with it. Both my girls are doing coding lessons. I think the idea of these are one of these skill sets which I think was a little bit more. It's more of a function of the time, 15 to 20 years ago, when maybe the people who now have 10 to 15 years of experience were going through university and learning some of these skills. But now this stuff can be done online, and we see women coming through in these fields across the board. So yeah, I'm quite hopeful that corrects itself organically over time. It doesn't need to be forced, because we're seeing it happening already.
I love it. So as a parent, you're actually did you have to force your daughters,
nope.
or did they want to do it by themselves?
Nope. Specifically, the younger one has a natural knack for this stuff, and I think that's a good way of pulling her off Roblox and Minecraft, is actually showing her actually how it's built underneath that. And I think there's no doubt we need more women coders. So if I can help in my small way, I'll definitely do that.
I will see hints for my kids as well. So Roblox and Minecraft is...
But they offer that in school now, right? I mean, that was not something that existed when I went through school. So now, they can pick electives and do coding. It's amazing. So,
But I think this, the basic coding and the basic data stuff now impacts every single one of us. So no matter what position or role we are having, that these skills are important going forward into the future. So whether you are in HR or in finance or in commercial technology, you have to understand right now data and make your decisions much more data-driven. You have to understand the basics of coding and having your website or Instagram page or whatever. So much more digital. So that skill set is also important for all of us.
I am very aware of the thing that you said earlier on, John, where you said, you have to at least be a little bit technically minded. You have to have an interest in the thing.
Yes.
And there's this point of entry I don't think curious is the right word, but I guess it's really important, I think, that we keep thinking, even as age appears before us, that we keep thinking we can learn new things and that we don't plateau. And that we don't start settling, saying, "Oh, well, that's not going to be me or my generation." I don't do that platform. I don't do that app. I think there's some kind of courage. It's nearly bordering on social shame if you don't know the latest stuff these days, right? So following through that idea of yours, I don't know where I'm going with this, so help me out if I don't land correctly. But following through that idea of yours, John, of how some of it is going to have to come from the inside of Deutsche Telekom, and it should be beautifully blended and mixed with high-end talent coming from the outside. If I was sitting on the inside and feeling a bit insecure about my own technical ability, what is a piece of advice you could give me?
Reach out to us. I mean, we love talking about our topic. I think you can see. And the team does. I think, when you've got a team that's as passionate as this one, working on topics as as interesting as these, it's not hard to, grab us, maybe not in the cafeteria anymore, but maybe over WebEx, and interact. And I think in the day-to-day work, there's always an opportunity for digital. We spend as much time talking to the finance guys or the HR guys now about the work that they're doing over there as well. So it doesn't just need to be app development or website development. There's opportunities to learn in this space, and they will serve you well, no matter which career you're taking, certainly in this industry.
I bet you 10 years from now, the podcasts are actually led by robots, huh? Because they've discovered that robots are better
Sentient
podcast
hosts.
leaders.
That's scary. Yeah.
Hannah, if you allow me, actually, as I mentioned in the very beginning, I have a number of questions. So if I can just go one by one and read as they came to John.
You sure can.
Just to round
Please.
this off. So, John, one question was, we have one app. It was a big development for Europe in Deutsche Telekom. What is the next big thing, next big technology coming for Europe?
After One App. So I think One App was a step in the direction of seeing whether we could develop something centrally and deploy it across many. I think, developing products centrally and deploying them across multiple countries has its own risks and challenges. So we wanted to put our toe in the water to check how that would work. And I think the proof point is it did work. And with support from the NatCos, we could find, for certain use cases or certain challenges, we could make that work. And I think we'll do more of the same now. But it won't just be across digital space. It'll be across, as you know, the new team has been brought together between telco products, so broadband and television, along with the engineering and the IT team and the digital team. That's all one team now. So we all sort of operate together. Before that bringing together, I think we had lots of interactions and lots of overlaps. But now it's much more formalized and much more sort of brought together. So the over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll be making steps into deploying Android television by the same team across the group, launching RDK for broadband, which will sort of really greatly improve the customer's experience with their broadband and router topics. So I think we'll be definitely moving into the home, into customer interactions, and expanding our capabilities there.
Sounds like a lot of potential in there, Hannah.
Oh, God,
gosh,
yeah.
This is interesting. Okay, next one. Future of digital marketing skills required. And what interesting use cases from NatCos can we share in the area of future of, I would say, digital marketing? That's what is meant here.
I might answer that question slightly differently. So I think digital marketing is an area where you can do any sort of insight and reading on. And I think there's lots of schools of thought about where that's going. I think maybe what's more interesting for us is how that relates in our context. So a traditional brand will have to use the traditional digital marketing tools to interact with customers. As a telco, I don't think we have to do that. We already have 60% of our customers growing on the app, which means we don't have to pay Google and Facebook for that marketing. We already run an Android operating system for television, which means we can communicate with our customers directly without having to pay third parties to do that. Now that's a luxury that we have that we need to do more of. I keep telling my team the end outcome ideally would be where we spend zero money on performance marketing. Brand would always be there, but performance marketing those budgets could eventually become zero, because why would you ever have to use a traditional digital marketing tool if you can make contact with customers directly through the channels that we have already today that customers are interacting with? Those are the areas where I think we're doubling down on and focusing on.
And that's the skill you mentioned so many times today.
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
And last one from my side, in order to become a digital expert, does age come into play?
Age?
Do I have to be at a certain age to be an expert?
Absolutely not. I think, again, as mentioned before, this is a part of the business which is not so old, and there's no such thing as a 20 or 30 year veteran in digital. It doesn't exist, right? And if you knew a lot about the industry 4 years ago and then you went into a black box and came out again today, you'd basically be having to start again from scratch. It's moving so quickly now. So I think with the right mindset and the right interest, and the right ability to churn and learn, you can do it at any age. I think there's no restrictions there.
Thank you. Just start.
I love that point so much. I want us to say it out loud again, because I think it is just so important that the idea of an expert isn't, as a matter of fact, changing, because being an expert at something for 20 or 30 years, which is actually maybe combined with the expertise role of old, right? That's no longer the way for any one of us, because the it is changing so quickly.
Correct. Exactly right.
So actually now that changes for me. The definition of an expert is no longer someone who's like been at something for 20 or 30 years, but it is someone who has a certain mindset about being able to take on board the new thing.
100% right.
And going with the flow. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Again, an expert is someone who understands the field deeply and potentially better than their peers, not someone who's been doing it for 20 years, because that's not relevant in this context.
So in a way, I'm being daring now, but expertise has changed from having experience to having a mindset.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. I like that. I might use that one.
I find that so inspiring, because that means it's true what we're saying. We're trying to go beneath the surface of the corporate lingo here, and saying that anyone of any age can apply. That would be like blah 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 to me. But if you're telling me that mindset is no longer to do with 20, 30 years of expertise, it's to do with a mindset, that actually would help me, even at an older age, dare to think that I could be a talent.
Absolutely. There's no such thing as a 20 or 30 year expert in digital. They don't exist.
Exactly. Thank you for landing that for me. That is so cool. I think that is so cool.
You learned something, Hannah.
Yes.
I think we are
even today I learned something.
We are getting really right now high on time. John, would you like to say anything at the end of the podcast? Anything to share with the listeners and employees in DT?
No. I think again, thanks for the opportunity to come and chat. As I think you can tell, we love talking about the topic. Looking forward to continue to interact with the NATCOs. I think nothing happens without the last mile being delivered and developed by the teams that work across the countries. I love this job. I love this opportunity, and I love working with these guys. So I feel incredibly blessed to have this opportunity. I'm looking forward to having a big 2021.
Thank you, John.
And like you said, we'll just keep that invitation open, right? You're saying pick up the phone and call the team, or send you guys a text.
Send me put my mobile number there. I'm happy to take a WhatsApp. I love that.
Thanks, John. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Don't say it if you don't mean it.
Not at all.
Okay, thank you, John. Nice to meet you. Take care.
Take care.
See ya.